What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you, and one that I have been anxiously awaiting because this crosses over into multiple things I like, namely insanely fast, heavy metal and kaiju stuff. I love Godzilla. I mean, gamera's okay. We'll get into that here in a bit. But we are going to go over the latest offering from Oxygen Destroyer, Guardian of the Universe. This also comes out on the 9th of August on Redefining Darkness Records. This band formed in 2014 in Seattle. This is their third full length. I have their first two. They're both awesome and a little bit more themed towards Godzilla. And I'm going to read you the names just because they're ridiculous, but I love them. The first one was Bestial Manifestation of Malevolence and Death. And then the second one was Sinister Monstrosities Spawned by the Unfathomable Ignorance of Humankind. Both of those are a mouthful. Both of those are awesome, though.
Yep. And
for those that aren't familiar with this band, this is... God, all right. It's kind of a blend of, like, black metal, death metal, and thrash metal. And this band loves riffs and speed about as much as they love giant monsters.
I never sat down and heard a full album until today. And, yeah, I mean, we're talking, like, hyper death thrash here with some blackened elements, and pretty much that's what I got. And I think I have whiplash. I'm not 100%, but there's definitely something wrong up here because the head, I mean, this isn't even live, man. This was just the record. I don't even want to know what the live show is.
Yeah, this is only like a half an hour long, maybe a little bit more than that. And I legit feel like I just went to a live show where I was just banging my head constantly. And a lot of that has to do with the pace and intensity of this album. This might be one of the fastest paced albums I think we've listened to this year across the board. Granted, there are groovy sections where, like, all right, you get a chance to just kind of settle in a groove for a little bit. But the rest of this, honestly, it almost moves like insect warfare. Like,
kind of.
It is that fast. The opening track, Guardian of the Universe, The Final Hope. Well, of course, because, the theme has to kick in first, we get samples of people screaming and monster noises and explosions. And then the iconic roar of gamera, because we've moved from Godzilla to gamera. I'm not the biggest fan of gamera. I like the Heisei series. The early Showa stuff is stupid, and that's why they made fun of it so much on Mystery Science Theater 3000. But as soon as you hear gamera's roar, you are immediately just throttled by blast beats, thrash riffs. It is high octane as hell. This whole album runs at this pace too. Like, we took a moment to go, wow, that was really fast. And like, oh no, don't worry, the rest of it's just like this. Like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, we had to pause in between every track just to either A, catch up writing, or B, just have a moment to catch our breath, because it doesn't stop. In fact, there's even a couple Barnburner songs, as if we're not going fast enough. Drawing power from the empathetic priestess is going so fast it's almost grind. Just a short little Barnburner, and Nightmarish Visions of the Devil's Envoy is kind of the same thing, although that's a little bit darker of a song. A little bit more evil going on there.
While the speed of this is like full throttle pretty much throughout, there are like some fun nuances in terms of like riff changes, and like you can kind of hear what I would guess like a lot of the influences are, or like, at least things that are very comparable. Like, I definitely hear like Sodom or like R Noir, except in this case it's like a radioactive mutated giant Sodom/R Noir that is rampaging through Japan. I mean, this album kind of opens like any day in Japan, I assume. Like, I think this is just an everyday occurrence. Like, oh, giant monster, like, I'll just get inside the basement, I guess.
Yeah.
But there's also stuff in here that reminds me of like, Impaled Nazarene, which is definitely like a more thrashy style of black metal, and even Vader. Like, especially the speed and the drums. And while the drums almost stay at like just a constant blast, there's enough intricacies in terms of like changeovers in the drum work to kind of keep it a little bit more fresh. Like, you go from like galloping blasts, like, I mean, the first person I think of is Igor Cavalera in terms of like earlier Sepultura, but then like just straight up blasting, very similar to like Deicide, and then, like occasionally like a couple of like D-beat sections. And they change over rather frequently, like the accents will change, so it keeps it from sounding like a static, like, black metal blast beat all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even call a majority of it blast. I'd call it more D-beat blasts, because it's not It's not the full-on, like, gravity blast or full-on, like, hyper blast. It's normally a D beat. It's just done way faster than a normal D beat is. I think so, at least. While there is some straightforward blasting, most of it's a D beat blast.
And the fact that it's also played just intense as hell. Like, you can just hear this guy absolutely attacking the kid. And that's kind of across the board in terms of all the instrumentation on here. Like, every riff on here is just insanely savage, whether they're playing, like, just heavy, insane thrash riffs with machine gun chugs, more blackened tremolos, or even switching over to, like, death metal tremolos. Like, you get those high, gainy, cold ones, and then straight to, like, the lower register ones. Nightmarish Visions of the Devil's Envoy is definitely one where you can kind of pick that apart a little bit.
Or furthermore, in the death metal realm, we get some straight Morbid Angel tremolo going on in Awaking the Malevolent Destroyer of the Heavens and Earth. There, I said it.
You did.
That's probably the most evil track on there. Morbid Angel tremolo. It's got slower grooves
For a little bit.
And very entertaining riff changes, too. And that's another cool thing about this band is, as riffy as it is, to transition at that speed between these riffs is quite impressive.
Yeah, the riff changes are moving about as fast as Rodan flies. I have to throw in some more kaiju references.
There you go.
And then there's some riffs that are kind of like, I don't know, just a little bit different just in terms of the style. Like, Thy Name is Legion. The opening riff on there, it sounds like a sleazy, old-school heavy metal riff.
Yep.
Like something you could hear on, like, an Angel Witch album or a Motorhead album, albeit it is blasty as hell underneath. So I kind of like this interesting little play because it feels, again, like a little bit more melodic. It's not in the realm of death metal or thrash metal. It does eventually shift there because that's what they do. But it is kind of cool to hear these little interesting nuances in this blazing fast album. And that's the same with the vocals too. Like the vocals, while they stay kind of in a more like black metal sort of delivery, the cadences are a lot of fun, especially how he like follows the riffs and the beats. And his snarl is just nasty sounding. And you occasionally get some more like death metal roars that come in to kind of add a little bit of extra gravitas or character to the songs, like, Guardian of the Universe, the opening track, Awakening the Malevolent Destroyer of the Heavens and Earth, and Banishing the Iris of Sempiternal Tenebrosity. Both of those songs are about Iris, too. That's, I think, the only movie in the Hesse series for Gamera I haven't seen. So I still got to watch that one. It's a pretty badass villain, though. That thing looks pretty sweet.
And it's not all fast. It's not out without groovy pockets. The title track, Thy Name is Legion, Eradicating the Symbiotic Hive Mind Entity from Beyond the Void, that has a full-blown breakdown in it.
It's a full-blown sentence.
It's a full-blown sentence. Actually, a bunch of these are full-blown sentences. When I was writing this down, I was like, man, I'm not going to have room for notes. All those have groovy pockets in them. There's not like a full-blown really moment of just groove here going on. It's mostly just pockets, just to kind of let you reel in a little bit before they punch you again.
Yeah. Every song on here has a seriously fast moment. Like, there are songs that lead in a little bit differently, namely the last two tracks, Banishing the Iris of Sempiternal Tenebrosity, and the last track, which, oh my god, that's a sentence too. Exterminating the Ravenous Horde of Perpetual Darkness and Annihilation. That one kicks in with probably the slowest groove on the album. Honestly, it sounds like a slightly more death metal inspired Slayer. The riff itself almost kind of reminds me of like that opening riff on Postmortem on Rain and Blood. Like, it just stomps in. It sounds epic and evil. And of course, because this band would be remiss in their duties as a kaiju worshipping band if there weren't samples all over the place of just dialogue from the movies, I do kind of wish it was actually the Japanese dub rather than the English dubbing. Still, that's just a minor nitpick. Overall, it's very effective. They use it, intermittently too. And I like the fact that they don't like take long breaks for the samples and, just like, all right, we're just going to isolate that moment so everyone can hear the dialogue from the giant monster movie. Honestly, I'm a big kaiju fan. I really don't give a shit about the dialogue. Like, the humans can all die. I just want to see giant monsters destroy things.
That's fair.
So they don't pull, essentially, a mortician here, where you have to give time for the sample, and then the other half of the song is the actual song.
Yeah, right. And I don't think this would hit nearly as hard as it does if it wasn't for the mix. To make all this sound as great as it did, I thought everything was mixed really well. It's a super punchy mix. The drums pop and thwack. The guitars are both crunchy and have a real snarl to them. And the bass, I kind of like where the bass sits. While it's not real prevalent, it just kind of sits in like the middle, and it's got a little bit of warmth to it. I listened to this on both the speaker behind us and my powerful speakers in the car. It's not overpowering, but it sits really nicely. It just kind of adds a little bit of weight to riffs that move at such speed as this.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the bass playing, I think, is really solid. Like, you can hear it in the tremolos, just like very clear bass lines that come out. And again, everything is just a blistering pace on here, so it becomes this just like cacophony of riffs, but the riffs are awesome. Like, every riff in here was like, dude, this is just vicious sounding. Oh, it's black metal now. Oh, it's back to death metal. Oh my god, we're thrashing.
Yep.
My neck hurts.
I'm gonna have to ask you guys if you would please email us a coupon for either Advil or Tylenol. Either or, it doesn't matter, but we need it.
But yeah, I love the mix on here. This is Noah Buchanan from Nunslaughter, which is another band that I could definitely compare this band to.
Sure.
And like the guitars in particular, the thrashy snarl that's on them, it's just vicious sounding. Like, it makes this sound even heavier. And honestly, like, comparing this to the other two albums that I have, this might be one of the most heavy and ferocious albums yet. Like, I remember the other ones having maybe like a little bit of a break in them. This one is full tilt boogie the entire time, which I suppose, all right, this can get a little samey from track to track. Like, you really have to pay attention to like all the riff changes, because that's where a lot of like the nuance comes in. It's just the wild shifts from thrash metal to death metal, heavy metal, black metal. They kind of go all over the place. But in terms of the pace of this, like every song on here is ridiculously fast. Like, they do have moments where they do break it down a bit or just slow for a second, but sometimes, songs need a little bit more breathing room. By the time we got down to the last track, I'm not saying that again, that's an entire sentence. That was like the much needed groove point where it was a lot slower than everything else. And it hung out for a good chunk before inevitably just taking off. So while it does sound a little bit samey from track to track occasionally, I would say there's enough intricacies if you're paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, you're banging your head.
Yeah.
Like, this album will inspire you to move. Like, I tried not moving, failed immediately.
And most of the sameness, I would say, too, is in like the beginning of the songs, because by the time you get past the opening, say, 10, 15 seconds, there are enough riff changes and enough like pockets inserted in places to make it sound different. But like at the beginning of every song, it's like, oh, it's the same thing. It's the same beat. It's the same riff. Oh, nope, just kidding. So it's not that bad. But again, if you're not paying attention, it's all gonna fly by really quickly. The first time I listened to this today is when I was taking out the trash at work. By the time I made it to Banishing the Iris of Sempiternal Tenebrosity, I was like, whoa, what happened? Like, I wasn't paying attention. And then I listened to it again today, here, and I was like, okay, I get it. But if you're not paying close attention to the record, it's gonna fly by and you're just gonna be like, what happened?
Why does my neck hurt? What happened to my shirt? Who tore my shirt? I did that?
Yep. Am I bleeding? Why am I bleeding? What the fuck?
Who's that dead guy? But I gotta say, like, this album opens and closes really well. Like, there's a whole bookending effect because, they stick with their themes. I love them for it. I mean, it opens up again with all the kaiju appropriate noises, and it closes with that too. Like, you get one last gamera scream, and then you hear the sound of him taking off in the little whirly-gig turtle shell. He's not nearly as cool as Godzilla. Like, Godzilla's so much cooler. And I thought about bringing down some Godzilla figurines to kind of, like, hey, we can have fun theming, but it's a different universe, and I'm not going to cross-contaminate until they finally do a crossover where the two fight and Godzilla whoops that turtle. So overall, I got to give this 4 stars. Like, this is ridiculously fun. I might be slightly biased there because, again, big kaiju fan here. But if they didn't have that theme, it would still be just this wrecking ball of riffy destruction. Like, this album has it out for your neck, your shoulders, probably your feet. I need to see this band live after this. I've been wanting to see them live anyway. This is just a storm of awesome riffs. I love the intensity on here. And again, while it kind of runs as like just one continuous beat down, there's a lot of cool riffy changes in here. And you know what? This is just flat out fun. Like, I love a good, fun, intense album. And this is that. If you're a big fan of Nunslaughter, Vader, Impaled Nazarene, Ara Noir, just tons of ridiculously fast bands that probably don't talk about kaiju, check this band out because they'll cover at least that kaiju part damn well.
Yeah, I too am going to give this 4 stars. This record is super entertaining, super aggressive. And when I say super aggressive, I mean absolutely vicious, as I think any monster would be. The drum work I didn't talk enough about. Those poor drums. They're in pain. It is a beatdown from start to finish on those drums. So many single stroke snare rolls. My goodness. And all the cool cymbal accents. It's weird, you know, when you're just doing a bunch of blasts and a bunch of D beats and you need to break it up a little bit. It's cool how he follows all the riff transitions with a bunch of really neat cymbal work. Like, there's a bunch of dinner bell rides, there's a bunch of like splash moments. He's got a bunch of cool hi-hat accents to kind of syncopate these amazing riffs at the crazy speed they are. It's just really cool how that's done. It is riffy as all get out, albeit while super fast, and while it can get a little bit samey, there is enough to break it up. Again, you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention. I wouldn't suggest trying to do anything else while listening to this record. You're going to want to ice up, maybe some icy hot. You're definitely going to want to stretch. I need to see a chiropractor after this record. It is that intense. Not a lot of groovy moments, but that's okay. Again, if you're going to go full throttle, if you're going to bring it, do it like this. They definitely did it right. Yeah, if you're a fan of probably Vader, probably Sodom, I would state also Hyperdontia. I get huge Hyperdontia vibes. A little bit of Enforce, some Horrendous, some Slayer. There's a bunch of stuff going on in here. It's very entertaining. Once again, I would definitely recommend checking it out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below at thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel up in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats, too. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And as always, a bunch of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal. Album reviews, of course, discography rankings. If you watch the end of the Meshuggah video, you know what's up for our next batch of rankings. Collection updates, is it metal, is it not metal, states of metal, and a bunch of new discussion topics that we've picked up along the way that seem to be pretty popular. I don't know, all this stuff we do it to keep you guys entertained. We appreciate you. Thank you for being a part of Thralls of Metal. Thank you to our family, our friends, our subscribers, you know, random people we run into at shows. We appreciate all of you. You've made Thralls of Metal far cooler than just a review channel, and we're very thankful for that.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule, and I'm just going to thank you one more time because of all that rulage, and we will catch you later.